Hello and welcome to the Wedding Dish Podcast. Grab your fork and knife and take a seat at our table as we dish on all things weddings. You'll hear stories and tips from real couples and wedding pros about love, life, and entrepreneurship. I am your hostess with the mostest on the Wedding Dish Podcast, Sarah Alapin, and I am also the CEO of Photos from the Hardy and District Bliss. We have our little French bulldog buddy, Snorosaurusing behind me. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see him in his puffy jacket because it is very cold in DC right now. And he might make a loud snore appearance. Before we get started, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, definitely check it out, flag it, and go back later. We dished with Tony Searle about vegan and cruelty-free makeup for the boho and celestial couple and beyond. It was such a fun conversation, so educational, really enjoyable. Swing back around for that one after you listen to today's episode. And speaking of, today we are dishing with a pastor and minister of more than 30 years who has officiated more than 1,800 weddings. You heard that right, 1,800 weddings, and is the host of the Wedding Chaplain podcast, as well as the author of Before God and These Witnesses, the human behind Wedding Chaplain, Reverend David Anderson. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm very excited.
I'm excited for this conversation. I honestly, when I was thinking about this interview, I was like, there's a lot that I don't know, which made this interview so fun for me to put together.
Good. Very good.
So I would love to learn a little bit more about the difference between a real minister versus someone who was ordained on the internet. Can you tell us a little bit about, what that actual difference is, what that looks like, and what that means?
Absolutely. So the first thing I tell people, like that's the Pinocchio question that I get all the time. Are you a real minister? And I kind of tap my face and see if I'm a real boy. The reality is there's a lot of folks in the wedding industry. There's a lot of officiants in the wedding industry they're not clergy. And there's nothing wrong with that. 70% of weddings this year are going to be outside of a house of worship. So it just sort of stands to reason that you're going to be running into folks who are doing weddings that are not clergy. And for me, it's a challenge because we used to own this. Like the church used to own this. The old song, "You're going to the chapel. Why? To get married. That's why you go to the chapel." But again, you have all these different reasons why folks are not using the house of worship. They don't attend anymore. They have found someone that is outside of their faith tradition. Or they simply just want a different venue. They want a barn. They want, just something. And it's always the joke I tell people. I'm in a barn almost every Saturday. That's kind of where I live. And what has happened is a lot of times, unfortunately, and I speak for a huge swath of people. There's a lot of ministers that won't travel. There's just a lot, I'll marry you if you're in my church, if you're in the cathedral, and if you've jumped the hurdles, if you've done all the things that you need to do, you need to be a member. We might have some other, religious clauses or ethical things or relationship things that are preventing them from doing that wedding. And so, what I found myself doing years ago was realizing there's this whole market out here of folks who are looking for a real minister. Now, what came from that was like there's a lot of folks who there's two things. One, there's this website that came out, oh gosh, I don't even know, 20 years ago. And the big one is the Universal Life Church. And you can get ordained online. It's like $50. You can get an ordination. And all that basically says is you are licensed to do a wedding in in that particular state. So each state has different rules. Each state has different, requirements. Some states you have to be connected to a church. So you have to have some kind of, your address has to be a church. Some just have, hey, you just have to be ordained. You just have to be registered with the state. So that basically means anyone can get ordained online and they can basically hang out a shingle, and I'm open to do weddings. The other one that has really sort of happened recently is there's this trend. Okay, I want my dad to do the service. I want my brother to do the service. I want my cousin. I want my fraternity brother, my sorority sister. I want just someone to do the ceremony. And both of those just sort of create interesting things. The the more that a the more the wedding industry grows, I try to tell people it's not just a ceremony. It is not just ceremony. It's a weekend. The weekend is the wedding. It's a 5-act play. You have rehearsal, you have rehearsal dinner, you have getting ready on Saturday if it's on Saturday. You have the ceremony and you have the reception. That's a lot of moving parts, and so you have to think through all of those things. And when you ask somebody who has not done a wedding before, that's sort of the biggest one. They come to rehearsal, and I'll just say it, like, you are the coordinator's worst nightmare. You're the photographer's worst nightmare, because you don't know what you're doing. Now I've written the wedding, or Googled it, or I've AI'd it now. I've chat GPT'd and I put some cool things and I got the quote from Khalil Gibran and I know what to do and all that. How to maneuver in a venue, how to maneuver in a place that you're not familiar with, that the couple's not really familiar with. They've been there. They've only visited a few times, but how to do that thing. When to do certain things in a ceremony, like why should you do this part here? Why should you do that part there? That's difficult. That is difficult. And I have seen, I've heard some stories from couples, and probably the best, I hate to use the word business, the thing that drives my business are the people who went to their friend's wedding 3 months ago and they said, you know what? We got there. The ceremony was 5 minutes long. No joke. It was 5 minutes long. They didn't really say anything, and then it was over. And so when they call me, they're like, we just don't want that. We just don't want that thing. Okay, we don't want you to talk for an hour, but we don't want that. So that's difficult because we really don't know what we're doing. So that's the first part is it's the weekend, to be able to navigate. How do you speak to a photographer? When a photographer comes up and says, hey, do you mind where I stand? How close can I get? Can I get behind you? Can I get next to you? What's a good thing? What's interference? What not? When the venue is asking, hey, where are you going to be? Where's everybody coming from? All of that. Sometimes your coordinator is very involved, and sometimes they won't have a coordinator. They'll just assume, hey, you're the minister. You know what you're doing. So it's really first the weekend. You got to be able to say, hey, this is how this stuff goes. The second part, I guess, that the most important part is that there's I want you to have a good day. I want you to have a good event, and I will make sure you have a good event. Okay. But I want you to have a good marriage as well. I want the wedding to go well, but I want the marriage to be incredible. If you have a perfect day and you break up in 5 years, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's not a waste, but yeah, I want you to have those things. And so clergy, we are, regardless of denomination and where your beliefs are and all that, if you went to some kind of seminary, we learned counseling. I mean, and that has to be a question, like, hey, maybe where did you go to school and all that? But most clergy, the biggest source of counseling in our country today is clergy. Then you get into professionals and you get into licensed and all that stuff. But where most counseling takes place is in a house of worship, regardless of denomination. And to be able to have a conversation with someone and say, hey, this is, maybe think about this and tell me about you, tell me about your family, tell me about your background, tell me about your finances, and just sort of ask some questions. It's an incredibly important thing. And so that's, I guess, a start, is to say there are a lot of folks out there. They are actually pretty good. They'll go through a ceremony and they'll kind of say it well and do it well. But then there's that other piece that a lot of them don't really get to.
Yeah. And I think that's so important too. And that was kind of what I was hoping you would tell us a little bit about is, I a lot of my friends who got married in the church, which I didn't, they had premarital counseling. And I was just so curious if, and also in the Catholic Church, at least when a lot of my friends were getting married, the Catholic priests would not marry them on location. Right. And I don't know if that's still the case or not, because things change.
It is. I would say, and there are maybe some, but it's, and I don't want to, misspeak. I'm a Protestant minister, so I don't want to, offend any in the Catholic branch. But yeah, it's, for a lot, it's like, hey, it has to be done here. It has to be done here, and and if you don't do it here, then it doesn't count. And so there's a lot that has sort of turned people off of that. The counseling piece, though, is important. It is incredibly important. There are different types of counseling. There are some times where, depending on the different cathedral you're at, it's very religious based. Like, you have to have these beliefs, and we ought to make sure that, hey, you're going to come here, you're going to be a member here, and all that. I tend to go more on the, I want to know your background. Tell me your story. How did you two meet? How long have you been together? How long have you been engaged? There's a few numbers that are incredibly important. If we always battle this 50% divorce rate number. But it's a very inflated number, because it really just takes the number of marriage certificates and the number of divorce decrees in a given year, comes out to about 50%. If you take out the people who get married when they're 16, and that still happens in some states, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21, the divorce rate's very low. It's those ages that make the divorce rate number very high. And so a lot of times you just want to sort of say to a couple, like, hey, if you guys are together for 2 years and you're over the age of 24, you have a high chance. You have a high chance of success. If you've only been together for 6 months and you're 21, yeah, you might still make it, but it's just riskier. And so then you start, well, just tell me about your family. Tell me about, I came from a divorce background. She came from a divorce background. Okay. Then those things start to tick up a little bit. Does everybody approve of you guys being together? Oh, no, my dad's not really a big fan of him or her. Like, okay. So, and it's really just somebody asking those questions. Because if you know those basic things, those basic just statistics, that these things are important. Now, your marriage is not an actuarial table. I'm not going to sit here and just punch these on a calculator and say, okay, you're out. But these are things you have to be aware of. You have to be aware of that. And if you yourself, if I have folks who are coming from, they've already had a marriage, this is their second marriage. And a lot of times, unfortunately, those folks will get a lot of weird looks from the religious world, and that's terrible when I hear that. Like, hey, I went through a divorce, and now that our church just really doesn't want to help me. I feel terrible for that. But you have to have another conversation. It's like, hey, I want to make sure you are not trying to smuggle in your stuff from the first one into the second one, because people do that. The main reason, oh my gosh, why'd you get divorced? Oh, I was married to a weirdo. I was married to a jerk, and that's the easy answer. I've never had anybody in my office tell me, they explain why their first marriage fell apart. I've never had anyone say it was me. I screwed up. It was me. I mean, if I look back on it, I have to own it. No, it's always like that person. It was it was them. And so you got to come back around and say, hey, it takes two to tango. And maybe they were, maybe they were, maybe there's a whole room of jerks out there that I don't know about and they're all in there waiting. But that you had some things to do with that. And so don't use the second one to fix the first one and all that. So just let's talk about finances. Just, hey, if you have debt and on the hook for, and that changes for different states, but you have to know some of that. It is not just a party, and it's not, and I always hear people say it's just a piece of paper. I get it. I understand, but you work very hard for pieces of paper every 2 weeks, and those are important. So let's do some of that. So I want people to take that seriously, to say, hey, I want to have somebody who can obviously say good things about me at a ceremony, but hey, I'm going to look at your life a little bit. I know there's a fear. There's a fear that we're going to see something and we're going to tell you can't get married. It's not we can't tell you, we all know. Like, listen, if we were to say no to you for some reason, then you're going to go just to the next person and get married. That you have to sort of look at this, and just to have somebody, it's a checkup, it's a tune-up, it's all of that. We have consultants for businesses. We have people that look at our cars. We have dentists and doctors that we go to. And I'll go back to my first thing. Like, you don't ask your cousin to do your dental work. You should not ask your cousin to do your wedding. Just have somebody, hey, I'm going to walk you through that whole process. And out of that conversation, I think you get a much more textured message. When I'm standing in front of a couple that I've had a lot of conversation with, I could say some things, and I'm going to say something different than your parents or your friends or your siblings, as wonderful and special as all of them are. I get to say some things. Just, hey, I've examined these folks. This is for real, and this is their story. It's a beautiful story, and this is why we're going to celebrate this. And then I'm going to charge you to do some things moving forward. This is not the end of your road. This is the beginning, and think about these things moving forward. I guess the other thing that's super important to me is I've developed a relationship with each of my couples, and I have some. I have some that, hey, I do the wedding, I hug them, I take a selfie, I'm good, and I'll never speak to them again. Okay. I have about 10% that I still interact with, and after 1,800, I don't have the bandwidth to do much more than that.
Oh gosh. I mean, you'd have to be having like a wedding.
Oh yeah. It'd have to be, it'd be all day long. So, it's an honor. It's a burden, when someone reaches out and says, hey, do you remember us? You did our wedding 5 years ago. Like, oh yeah. And I'm really like, oh, I'm hoping you're telling me that you had a baby. That's awesome. We're going to celebrate that, and there's been times I've done, dedications and baptisms and things like that. And there's other times where they'll call me like, hey, do you do funerals? I do. I've done a lot. My grandfather passed away. I didn't really have anybody. And, you were just so cool during the wedding process. Could you do that? Like, absolutely. But then the hard conversations are, yeah, you did our wedding 5 years ago. We're in trouble. And it's not to say I enjoy, but it's, yeah, absolutely. I will continue to walk with you through that process. And even if that process has a very bad ending, I will gladly still walk with you through that process to give you advice, and hopefully, hey, we can maybe fix this. We could do something about this. I already know you guys. I'll go back through my stuff and say, oh my gosh, did I miss something? But everyone has choices, and everyone makes choices, and everybody on paper, even if you look amazing, you could still do some stuff that's just bad. But to have somebody, that's where I guess the friend, family, cousin piece isn't going to help you because you don't tell those people. You don't tell
No.
anybody. And I hate it when somebody says, I didn't feel like I had anybody to talk to. Like, nope, you have somebody. And I'll jokingly, not in a weird stalker way, but I will jokingly tell all my couples, you have entered into a lifetime contract with me. And I want you to keep my number. And if I never hear from you again, great. But you can call me anytime you want. As long as I'm alive, as long as I have this number, you can reach out. And I will answer your call and we'll talk. And from that has come some amazing stories. I mean, just, some folks that were about to bag it and they didn't, pointed them in the right direction, brought them back in and say, hey, we're just going to go through the same stuff I told you before is going to be the same stuff I'm going to tell you after. But you probably weren't listening. If it's a month before and I don't meet with anybody a month before the wedding because no one's listening to anything I'm saying.
No, you're at saturation point.
Yeah, like, wow, it's just over. But no, that's an important piece to have somebody have that kind of relationship with you, which you just won't find with just a speaker at your wedding or an officiant. So I said a lot there. So I'm a minister, so I talk a lot. But any thoughts?
But you
on any
actually
of that?
you answered like my next two questions, which is amazing, which is, does your relationship continue beyond
Yes.
the wedding, which it does. And I think, to your point, that is so important that you do know you have someone to go to. Because, typically like and this isn't the case for everyone, but a lot of people that I know, when they are having trouble, if they don't have an easy person to go to, they just won't go anywhere. They'll just suffer through it in isolation, which I is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. So, wherever you're getting help, not to say, you have to go in any direction. But I think, when you are going through a difficult time in your marriage or your relationship, not having someone to go to can be really challenging because that's another barrier, right, to getting help.
Absolutely. You have to have a third person, and this is where the minister can help. But again, you have to choose the right one. And there's a lot of times people they'll call me and they're like, "Hey, we go to XYZ church, but we don't think that minister can help us." I'm like, that's fine. We're cool. But we ask people for advice on just about everything. If I knew the secrets to weight loss, I would have done them by now. And, no, I have to eventually ask somebody for help, my car, my legal stuff, all that. Couples, sometimes they'll make a couple of mistakes. One is they will assume the answer to our problem, it is in my head or it's in your head, period. That's it. There is no other option. And no, there can be a third option. There can be a third person who's out there that can help. And the other reality is waiting too long, waiting too long. And a lot of times I will run into situations where a decision's already been made. Okay. I'm leaving this person. Could we do counseling? Yes, we'll do counseling. And they kind of enter into that counseling piece with, I'm on my way out. Tell me your spiel real quick so I can just confirm that the person I'm with is wrong. But I'm already out. I've already made a decision to do something else. So waiting too long is hard as well. That a lot of times, man, if you would have just called me a year earlier, 2 years earlier, after the first sign of something, then that could have been helpful. And it's hard. No one wants to admit we do not know how to do marriage very well. We don't. And the only models we have are our parents. Okay. God love them. They could be awesome. They could be wonderful, or they could be challenging. And that's our model. That is it. That's the only model we go with. And that you either hear people say this one thing, it says, I'm going to do it the way my parents did it, or I'm not going to do it the way my parents did it. No one ever says, I'm going to do it the way my third grade teacher did it. No, they don't say that. Like there's only one model, and it's either a good model or a bad model. And so if it's a bad model, we determine, say, hey, we're going to do it differently, but our genetic makeup tells us, or just doesn't really give us a choice. We're gonna do it like them, So, um, so yeah, just have somebody else to say, hey, I didn't know your parents, but let me ask you guys some questions, and just to have somebody ask the question, hey, why are you two getting married? Just why? Just you know, I'm not doubting. Just tell me, like, why are you two getting married? What are the reasons for why you're getting married? What's your motivation? What do you guys think about marriage? Is it just, is it just a big party? I mean, is it just you need somewhere to live? I mean, what's motivating you? What's
Yeah.
driving you to do this? And to be able to articulate that, because those are important questions to just have somebody ask you, hey, why are you two together? So every time I sit down with a couple, I always have them answer two questions. The first question is, why are you marrying your fiance? And the second question is, why do you think your fiance is marrying you? Which is a
Oh.
great question. And so
Mhm.
they write out those answers and they give them to me. And that second question is really interesting. I know I like you. You're handsome, you're cute, you're wealthy, whatever. Why are you marrying me? Why are you marrying me? Like, hey, you are worth something. You have some internal goodness to you because someone wants to be with you. Well, do you believe that? Do you understand that? Um, so to have all that going on, just have somebody ask you those questions. It's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting self-reflection that I think is also very important, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, what are the values that I bring to this relationship? What is the value that I bring to this relationship? Is it that I'm kind? Is it that I'm witty? That I can, I have emotional resilience?
Mm-hmm.
What is it that makes this home a better place because I'm in it?
Absolutely.
Um, that's a really important question to ask yourself because it
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 is.
matters. You matter and you are half of this relationship. Um, I like that. I think everyone should ask themselves those questions.
They should. People have a weird thing, people believe whatever's going on in your life, the wedding's going to fix it, whatever it is. If my family's kind of weird, financially, I'm struggling. And we could be engaged and we could be arguing. We could have all kinds of conflict. And there's a weird thought that we'll just get to the wedding. As soon as we have the wedding,
Yeah.
it'll be fine. It'll all change after that. And the wedding really does nothing. It really does a lot of nothing. And it's hard to tell people that because I want you to have a magical weekend. I mean, I
Mhm.
love weddings. I mean, I
Me
will
too.
eat bacon wrap stuff every weekend. It's awesome. It's fabulous. Okay. Everybody's happy. Everybody looks amazing. It's just the best. It's just the best day ever. But there's a weird moment. There's this weird moment. It's about 8:30 at the reception, and you've done everything. You've had the ceremony. You're at the reception. You've taken all your pictures. You've cut the cake. You've done the dances, the speeches, all that. And around 8:30, that's when the DJ starts to pull out the young music that the older people don't know. And then there's this weird thing that starts happening around 8:30. Some of those older folks are going to start leaving.
Mhm.
And they're going to come up to you, even if you could stay till 10, 11, midnight, whatever your venue lets you. But at 8:30, they're going to say, hey, we love you and we got to go. Like, what? And you don't even know what to do with that. Like, what do you mean? And it starts to dawn on you that it's over. And then you really basically, you still got stuff to do and there's still fun stuff going on, but you're basically saying goodnight for the rest of the evening. I mean,
Mhm.
really for the rest of the night. Whether you have 100 guests, 200 guests, whatever, you're saying goodnight for the rest of the evening. And you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready for that moment so that when you start going into those next few days and there's this coming down point, you're okay with that. You're okay with that. Hey, I'm excited about today, but I am excited about this life with you. I'm excited with this next chapter with you. And all the cool things are going to happen. Kids, we're moving, we're taking on a new job. Um, whatever it is. Or the weird thing is, if we just go back to the house, like if we just go back to the house after a week, that could be very weird. That could be very weird. Like nothing
Yeah.
changed. Nothing changed. You still look the same. I still look the same. I went back to my same job and we had the same dog, the same car, and nothing changed. There was the pumpkin didn't do anything. And that's hard for some people. Like it's just going to be this magic, marriage is this magical. Like, no, if you're most couples are already living together, they're already kind of in that place. Like
Mhm.
really, you're just not a whole lot. That's not really, it's not going to change a whole lot. And so you have to be like, the problems that you have, if you have anything that's happening before the wedding, it's going to continue after the wedding.
Yeah,
You know,
that's true.
it's all going to be there. And so you got to have the tools to be able to deal with that stuff. Or it's just, you're going to be looking for the next event to change it. Okay. And if you don't do any of this stuff and we get event based, the next weird milestone is we'll have a kid, we'll have a child. That'll fix it. So we're kind of weird and we don't really talk very well. We got these money problems and our family's got all these dynamics. Once we have a baby, whew, that's the answer. Like, nope, that won't do it either. So you have to have like, hey, how do we do the relationship in a good way? So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because that's what the wedding is. It's the entering into the next part of the relationship, but it's
right,
not changing it.
no,
Um, and I think that can feel especially hard because it, in a way, still does change our identity as
mm-hmm.
humans because
It
we are now
does
a married human. And
absolutely.
but it doesn't feel different. And that is a very strange experience to go through. I struggled with that personally. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, so now I'm just the same person I was, but I have a different last name, and that's odd.
It's kind
Um,
of like it's like high school graduation. Do you remember
yeah,
graduating from high school? Everybody, my whole high school, like, oh my gosh, these grades are so important. These attendance things are so important and all of that. And whether you're on some football field or in the gymnasium or whatever, they call your name and you walk across the stage and you get this piece of paper and nothing happened. They all look, and everybody just looks dazed. They just look completely stoned out of their mind. Like, what just happened? Nothing happened. The sky didn't open up. There's no thunder. And eventually you figured, okay, my parents probably talk to me different now that I'm a graduate. Once I go to college or once I'm 18, then you can start to see some visual things. But yeah, the graduation, wedding ceremony, all of it. There's it's nothing. It's everything but nothing. And you have to like the relationship is way more important than the event. Um,
mhm.
and that's why you have to have a balance. And so getting that officiant minister piece right is so incredibly important. And let me just say, one of the things that's always amazed me, I'm the last one hired. I am the last one hired. Okay. If you
Yeah,
pick up the not.com or the app, they'll hire the cake before they hire me. It's
yep.
amazing. And they kind of start with venue and then they get the coordinator and they kind of go from there. And it's like, my goodness, you didn't even like you didn't even think about what was going to be said at the ceremony, but just to bring that person in, to start you through that process, to start you through that conversation, to say, hey, what is your budget? Do you have a budget? Is it just whatever your parents sort of dictated, or do you guys want to spend 40 or 30 or 50,000 or 20,000, or are you going to realize that I really don't have any of that to begin with? To have somebody sort of walk you through that process, because it's a huge transition. You are transitioning over time.
Mhm.
When you start dating, it's an I. Okay, I like you. You're cute. I could see you in my life. You're handsome. You're funny, but you will bring value to me. By the time you
Yep.
get married, it has to become a we. It has to.
Mhm.
It has to become a
Yep.
we. We bought a house. We got a dog. We're moving to Texas. And like, I was never going to think about moving to Texas, but we're moving to Texas. And so that you have to have somebody sort of give you a little tour guide. Okay.
Yeah.
Just, hey, I'm gonna get you guys from here to there and be a resource for you once you get to that place. And that doesn't come from just somebody who just stands up and says a few things. So,
Yeah, that's very true. This was amazing. Thank you so much for joining me on the Wedding Dish today. Where can our listeners find you online?
well, the best place to find me is going to be at weddingchaplain.com. So, and that's Chaplin's a weird word. It's not Charlie Chaplin. It's CHAPLAIN. So Wedding Chaplain, all one word, .com. And there you'll find my book. You'll find my podcast. You'll find my blog, which I just love writing. And eventually I have another book that's coming out in 2026 that is designed specifically for engaged couples. It's called the Boot Camp for Engaged Couples. So I'm hoping that's out by June of 26. So all of that, free resources, anything. And we do, obviously, I'm in Northeast Ohio. So, I probably can't come to your wedding if you're outside of that area, unless you're in Hawaii, and we can certainly talk. But we do premarital counseling really around the world, So I've had couples, even though I can't physically do the ceremony, that will do their premarital work. And so sometimes, and even if you are, not to say you should not have your dad or cousin do the wedding. If you are still going to go down that route, you still should do premarital counseling. And call me. I'll be glad to do it. And I may never be on site with you, but you could certainly still do the things that you need to do to get ready for that. So all of that can be found at my website. I'd be glad to interact with you on any level.
I love that. Amazing. Well, and of course, we will tag you and link in the episode description here, and we'll tag you on social media. You can find our website at theweddingdishpodcast.com, and we are at the Wedding Dish Podcast on Instagram. And you can, if you want to join us as a guest, you can definitely head on over to theweddingdishpodcast.com and apply. We'd love to have you. Don't forget to tune in next week. We have another amazing guest. And if you like the podcast, give us a follow, rate, and review on your favorite podcasting app. David, thank you again so much for joining me. This was such a fun episode, and I look forward to the next time we chat.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Cheers, everybody.